Welcome to the Wolff Den, presented by Ticket Time Machine. We're on location in Dyersville, Iowa for the Field of Dreams baseball game. We're having a little bit of technical difficulties to start, but we're happy to welcome Alex and Jennifer from HFC. I'll let you guys introduce yourself and give a little bit better introduction for those that are watching.
Okay, sounds good. Hi, everybody. I'm Alex Villano. I'm the Senior Director of Program Development and Strategy at HFC, formerly known as Hilarity for Charity, and I oversee our caregiving programs and our brain health education work, which I'll talk more about. And joining us today is my colleague, Jennifer Fitzpatrick, who, among a gazillion other things, sits on HFC's Care Advisory Board. So, Jen, I'll let you introduce yourself.
Yeah, I've been blown away by what HFC has been able to accomplish, and I'm so proud to be on their Care Advisory Board. But I'm also the author of a book called Cruising Through Caregiving, Reducing the Stress of Caring for Your Loved One. And I'm a gerontology instructor at Johns Hopkins University.
Well, great to have you guys here. Apologize for the inconvenience here a little bit, but I didn't want to cancel. I wanted to have you guys on because I think this is an extremely important thing to talk about. But I guess from the start, formerly Hilarity for Charity, so you don't go by that anymore.
No, we did a rebrand. We did a rebrand early last year, and so I'll just give a little background to who we are and how we got to HFC. So HFC was founded almost 10 years ago by actors, producers, comedians, all around all-stars, Seth Rogen and Lauren Miller Rogen, and they founded at the time Hilarity for Charity. In response to Lauren's direct experience with Alzheimer's disease, with her mother being diagnosed with early onset Alzheimer's at the age of 55. And so at the time, Lauren was in her mid-20s and feeling like she was very isolated in the experience of the disease, and really wanted to create a connection for young people dealing with Alzheimer's disease and their families. And so the way that they knew to best help people was through their work, which was sort of comedy and entertainment. And so they really started Hilarity for Charity as an event, and it was a fundraising event to raise awareness and to raise funds through the Alzheimer's Association. And so for many years, Hilarity for Charity was a fund within the Alzheimer's Association. And then about 3 years ago, they decided to become our own 501c3 nonprofit. And so we've been our own independent organization for about 3 years now. And as part of our sort of evolution as an organization, we decided to rebrand last year to become HFC, to still hold on to our ethos and our original sort of Hilarity for Charity brand, which we still use for our signature events. But as an organization, we go by HFC now.
Okay, that all makes sense now. Jennifer, how did you first get involved?
Well, I was actually introduced by another Care Advisory Board member. Her name is Dr. Lakeland Hogan of Home Instead. And Home Instead actually, HFC, what I love about HFC is they provide free respite grants for persons who are taking care of a loved one who has any type of dementia or mostly Alzheimer's disease. And so Lakeland introduced me and we partnered together, HFC. We partner with an organization called Oasis Senior Advisors to give out copies of my book, Cruising Through Caregiving, to their grant recipients, but also to folks that had applied for grants that they weren't able to fund at that time. So they were giving resources. The thing that's so wonderful about HFC and why I'm a donor and why I love serving on their Care Advisory Board is because so much of the money really goes to giving people help in the home so they can keep the person with dementia at home, and they give family members, the spouses, the adult kids, a break. And so that's how I became introduced. And I'm just so impressed with everything that they're able to do to help people. Dementia is such an expensive disease for families to deal with, and HFC really takes a lot of the financial burden off of families.
Yeah. So why is that?
Why is it expensive?
Why is it expensive? Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, so right now, the estimated number for the value that unpaid family caregivers provide is around $257 billion in unpaid care. And it's expensive for a lot of reasons. I mean, as you can imagine, with Alzheimer's disease and related dementias, as faculties decline and folks require more and more assistance with what we call activities of daily living, that really requires many hours of care. And so if it's an unpaid family member, or friend or community members who are providing care to that loved one, there are aids that are needed. There is equipment that is needed. Certainly all of the sort of related medical and medication prescriptions, not so much only for necessarily treating Alzheimer's disease, but sort of the related health issues that sometimes accompany the decline in cognitive impairment. And then you're looking at loss in wages for family members who have to give up work or decrease work. And so it sort of escalates. It certainly escalates over time. And part of our in-home care grant program, the goal there is to really reach families who, one, have a loved one at home who's living with Alzheimer's or related dementia, and who have a demonstrated financial need. And so the in-home care grant program, we've been operating for almost 10 years. That was sort of our original legacy program that we started very early on, as Jen mentioned, in partnership with Home Instead that delivers the care. And so a large majority of the funds that we raise are to cover those grants. And so family members can apply. We review the grants every month with an independent review committee made up of volunteers who are caregivers themselves, former grant recipients, practitioners, sort of thought leaders in the space. And we're able to provide two types of grants. One is a more long-term assisted grant for more hours of respite care, and one is more of a short-term grant. But it's really aimed at providing a break for family caregivers so that they can take some time to rest, run errands if they want, go to a movie. Really, they decide how they want to use that time for their own care and well-being. Jen, do I miss anything? Does anyone add anything?
The only other thing I would say about the expense is that, like Lauren Miller Rogan's mom, Adele, when she was diagnosed, she was in her 50s. And a lot of us are still working in our 50s, putting money toward retirement, paying the bills. And especially when someone is diagnosed with young onset, it's not just that the family members, the adult kids or the spouse, they have to take time to care, but there's lost wages for the person who actually has the condition. The other reason that it's so expensive is people are shocked how much Medicare does not pay for, how much, even if you're eligible for Medicaid, how much that doesn't pay for. And private insurance generally is not going to pay for home care in the home. So it's a really, really expensive disease.
Yeah, so let's talk a little bit more about what it actually is. I'm a big advocate for mental health. Does this fall on the mental health spectrum?
So it would fall under cognitive health. So Alzheimer's disease is probably the best known dementia. I think it accounts for about 65-70%. So dementia is basically a collection of symptoms. So short-term memory loss. You forget how to get back to your house from your local grocery store. You forget your dog's name. You might have some problems with impulse control. And when you have those sorts of symptoms, what we want is to go to a doctor, and a good doc will say, look, let's do some tests. Let's make sure that it's not something like that we could treat. It's in some cases, it could be something as simple as a medicine side effect. But then, of course, in a lot of cases, it could be Alzheimer's, it could be frontotemporal dementia, it could be Lewy body dementia. There's a lot of different types of dementia. So it's really it's considered to be a cognitive issue rather than a mental health issue.
Yeah, and it's like a neurological disease, and Alzheimer's disease is one cause of dementia, but as Jen mentioned, it's the most common cause of dementia, which is the more umbrella term for the collection of symptoms.
Yeah, I hate to rank things. I mean, my father died of pancreatic cancer. To me, is about as brutal a cancer, a disease as you can get. But in some respects, the way I've seen Alzheimer and the way it's affected people that I know and care about, it could be worse because you're living with someone they're not who they are, right? I mean, they don't know who you are. There's really zero quality of life from that point of view. So it's we got to do whatever we can to kind of enhance their quality of life. And what are some of the things that they can do with the money that you guys are doing, or with the research and the funds?
Yeah, I mean, I'll just say certainly for the care grant recipients, like I said, I mean, we really want them to leverage those hours in the way that makes the most sense for them. So our care grant recipients might use the time to, go get their hair done, or go work out, or see some friends, or sort of take a trip and or go to doctor's appointments. I mean, really what we see over and over again is that over time the caregiver's health starts to decline because there's so much demand on their time. It's very stressful. They're managing a huge workload in terms of caregiving. And without relief, I mean, we all need breaks from work, right? So without relief and with rest, over time, there's sort of an accumulation of health and mental health issues that will sometimes come up for family caregivers. We also provide free online support groups. That those support groups are available to sort of any family caregiver or friend who's taking care of a loved one with Alzheimer's disease. It's not restricted to just our care grant recipients. And we really work to bring together caregivers based on their preference for either being with their peer group or in a group with others who have the same relationship with their loved ones, so adult children or spouses and partners. And that's also a way to reduce the sense of isolation and to share resources and, to be able to vent and manage some of this, the stress that's related. I think and Jen can certainly talk about this in terms of strategies for caregiving, but part of it is to ensure that caregivers do stay connected because of the isolation and the demand of the disease over time, and because it is such a long caregiving journey. Our goal is to really provide as many tools and resources and variety and layer of support that we can. It might include caregiving coaching, which is something we can talk about, the support groups, the respite grants, resources. We do online sort of virtual workshops, and we've done a few with Jen around her book and sort of the strategies in her book. We've done things like music therapy, where people can log on, with their loved one and do, engage in the workshop together. And so it's really about as many points of contact along the way as possible, because it is a long journey. And we want to help sort of fuel caregivers for as long as possible.
Is there any problem with abandonment, or people want to do harm to themselves to just sort of end it, and the caregiver abandoning?
Matt, that's a really good question. And first of all, I'm really sorry about your dad. Pancreatic cancer is brutal, but you're right. Alzheimer's is pretty tough too. Yes, sometimes there are people who have nobody, or their kid, the adult kids or nieces or nephews, or they just kind of don't do anything. And so one of the things I try to emphasize to caregivers who beat themselves up and they say, oh, I'm not doing enough, I'm not good enough, I don't deserve to take time off. It's like, you do. There are people who do not help their loved ones, and adult protective services will come and try to find somebody to take care of them, or they sometimes become wards of the state even. But for the most part, most people with Alzheimer's have a loved one that does take care of them. But I want to go back to your earlier question, Matt, about quality of life, because even though the person is not the same, and they're not, every Alzheimer's disease can be 10 years, even sometimes longer. Slowly but surely, that person's not the same. However, they still can have some quality of life. And so in Cruising Through Caregiving, I talk about the concept of when you are around somebody who has dementia, don't try to have a conversation like the three of us are having right now. A lot of times that's not going to be productive. You're going to say to them, how was your day? And they're going to say ice cream. And it doesn't make any sense. But what you can do, and I joke, it's like two dudes hanging out. Like my husband will go to a baseball game with his friend, and the friend will just have gone through a bad breakup or something. And he'll come back from the baseball game and I'll say, oh, how was Joe? And he'll be like, what do you mean? And I'll be like, well, how's he doing after the breakup? And he'll be like, well, we didn't talk about that. We were watching the game. And so, and again, I know not every man is like that, but if it's two women, they're going to get into it, right? So I joke, like, no matter the gender of each individual, like, act like you're two dudes watching a game. Like, watch a game together, listen to music together, dance, garden. There are people who have Alzheimer's, who can no longer talk, but they can sing. They can dance, they can play in the garden, they can go for a beautiful boat ride, they can swim even with
they understand what's going on?
Well, yes. So yes, maybe not completely, maybe not fully, but they can enjoy experiences. So they might not remember the experience in an hour, but in that moment, they can experience joy. And in some ways, people who have dementia are more present than any of us.
Yeah, I was just
because
saying,
we're constantly thinking 5 steps ahead of time.
It's a great way to live, to be present and to cherish everything that you do, which, it's hard to do that. You try and do it, it's just hard to do. Like I'm here in Iowa for the Field of Dreams game. It's like almost a once in a lifetime kind of thing, and we don't realize how lucky we are. And as I was sitting in the airport I had a 4-hour plus delay yesterday, and I'm a complainer when it comes to that, more of because the communication is bad, not the delay. It happens, and I'm sitting there and I'm thinking, you know what? I'm on my way to Iowa. It's going to be one of the greatest experiences of my life, possibly. But it's just, we need stuff like that to help us think that way. But it's a shame because it always takes a tragedy or a bad moment to make you think that way. And the people, I have my friend Corey, I don't know if he's listening, is disabled and happiest person I know. I mean, everything makes this guy happy. It's unbelievable. And I don't know if it's that they don't know any better, right? And they don't know exactly what the situation they're in is, but it's really a joy to be around.
Yeah, it's a real exercise in sort of living in the moment, especially for caregivers who have to learn over time how to adjust sort of the dynamic. And that's, again, a lot of what we try to bring to our audience, either through we do a care newsletter that focuses on Alzheimer's family caregivers, again, like our online events. We have a caregiving resources page on our website. And so I think, as Jen mentioned, there are strategies, there are real tips and tricks for caregivers. And I think, again, like part of our goal is to, yes, it's a very hard and devastating disease. Our tagline is bringing light to Alzheimer's, because there are moments of joy. There are moments of hope. There is a way in which, again, as you're sort of adjusting the dynamic over time and sort of taking that walk with your loved one, different tools that caregivers can use so that it is a less frustrating experience. We talk a lot about improv, for example, so sort of bringing in important improv mechanisms, because that's a lot of what you're doing. And, when the loved one is still verbal, a lot of what you're doing is improv. And so, a lot of our previous sort of workshops are on our YouTube channel if anybody wants to check them out. And most of them are under an hour because we know time is very critical for caregivers. But there's lots on there just to help guide folks along the way. And resources like Jen's book, Cruising Through Caregiving, are really important because, again, the journey is not static. It changes over time as the disease progresses. And we want to do our best to make folks as sort of prepared and supported as possible.
Yeah, so the Wolff Den, we love to bring on organizations like yours and kind of talk about, give light to diseases and causes that people can get behind. And it's just hard. There's so many out there. It's hard to get the share of people's attention and dollars.
Yeah.
And you have to figure out, okay, what do I want to get behind? One of the things that I think is a factor is this thing curable? Right? I mean, if we feel like what we're doing can go towards a cure, what is the path to a cure? Is it something that never can be cured, or it's just, I mean, there's no cure for AIDS, but people are living fine with AIDS. So where are you guys in respect to a cure, or at least the ability to help? And then I want to talk about HFC and kind of, what you guys are doing throughout the year to raise funds and awareness.
Sure. So, there is no cure for Alzheimer's disease at the moment. There are some interventions to help with symptom control, and in some cases, in delaying the sort of progression of cognitive decline. But currently, there is no cure. And one of the areas that we focus on at HFC is brain health education, because the good news is there are what we call modifiable risk factors, where people can sort of take charge today to do things to make their brains more Alzheimer's resistant, and to prevent cognitive decline.
This is prevent. This is before you have anything.
Correct.
Diagnosed.
Correct. And here's I think a myth buster. So when people hear Alzheimer's disease, I think most people jump right away to, oh, that's an old person's disease. That's an aging disease. I don't have to worry about it. Or there's nothing I can do about it. And it's inevitable, so I'm not going to worry about it. What we do know now, and the science has been emerging really over the last 10 to 20 years, is that there are things that you can do today to take care of your brain. And we also know that Alzheimer's disease actually starts to develop in the brain 20 to 30 years before the first onset of symptoms. So that means for somebody who has a diagnosis of early onset, it's possible that the disease was forming in their brains in their 20s and 30s. So it really is a young person's disease as much as it is a disease that sort of manifests in the later years. And that's why HFC is really committed to changing the trajectory of Alzheimer's disease through brain health education. And I can talk a little bit more about that.
Do people like run away or try and like end things? Is that common for someone who has Alzheimer's?
Not really.
Yeah.
No, I've not. I think it's certainly that's a risk factor for anyone that's diagnosed with a terminal illness, which Alzheimer's is a terminal illness. It's definitely a risk factor. And we want to be very mindful of that when, as a health professional, as a mental health professional, if you're a family member. But no, by and large, people are generally it's very tough, but they're very courageous about it. And they're just trying to have the best quality of life. What a lot of them do, which is so admirable, is they join clinical trials because they want to participate so they can be part of a cure or part of, like you said, we have not cured AIDS or HIV, but people are living longer and living long, healthy lives. And also the other piece of that is a lot of people join clinical trials because they want to feel useful. Maybe they can't work at a job anymore, but this is something that is makes them feel valuable. And also for family, maybe their kids, their grandkids, if they can be part of prevention. So I see a lot of people really embrace the clinical trials, look into that. And I do see a lot less than suicidal tendencies. I see more wanting to spend quality time with family and friends while they still can make memories.
That's our goal when we're alive and without Alzheimer's too.
Yeah.
So it's a pretty good thing. I haven't heard of too many high-profile people with Alzheimer's. We hear Alex Trebek with pancreatic, and we just heard Christina Applegate with cancer and MS. Is it just that people don't put it out there, or is it something I haven't heard? I mean, is there a lot of high-profile people who experience this?
Yeah, I mean, that's a really good point. I mean, a lot of what we often say is that, I think Alzheimer's disease is still sort of marred by a lot of shame and stigma. And so in the same way that we used to whisper cancer, I think people are still sort of whispering Alzheimer's disease. One, there's a lot of misconceptions about it. It's very confusing. It's scary as heck, right? Because you're losing a piece of yourself over time. So there, I think that there are a lot of emerging high-profile folks who are coming out and talking about their experiences as caregivers, as allies with loved ones. And I think that, we will start seeing over time more folks sort of being public about their experiences. We have a story wall on our website, so we encourage people to share stories, as part of our work to sort of shed light and end the shame and stigma around Alzheimer's. Lauren, our co-founder, does IG Lives with a lot of high-profile folks to really talk about, both brain health as well as caregiving issues and Alzheimer's disease. And that's what our events, our signature events, are really meant to do. And so many of our events are, well attended and co-hosted by other, celebrities and high profile folks, who are very committed to sort of removing the whisper and really sort of kind of remove the shadows, bring it out to the light. And I think a lot of, culturally, movies, we're starting to see the theme emerge much more in movie and television themes.
I was actually going to go that route. Is there a movie? Because Seth had, and I'm drawing a blank on the movie he had with about cancer, the comedy one.
Yeah.
It was a great movie.
50-50. Yeah.
50-50. That's it. And I just saw a great movie on Netflix with Ray Romano about his friend who got diagnosed. I'll have to remember what the name was, but it's Ray Romano, and it's a really powerful movie about a friend dealing with his best friend getting cancer and not having a whole lot. So what movies are out there or shows that can maybe educate or give people a closer look at maybe what's going on?
So I think for the one that's great is one of the more recent ones, Still Alice. Julianne Moore won an Oscar, I believe, for that performance. And that is pretty medically accurate because the Alzheimer's Association consulted on that program, and it was written by a neuroscientist. But there's a lot of other really good ones. Away From Her is a great one. Gordon Pinsent and Julie Christie. With the late Philip Seymour Hoffman and Laura Linney did The Savages. That to me is one of the best movies I've ever seen about siblings caregiving for a loved one, a parent who they weren't close to. And it just showed the dynamics between the siblings. The Notebook. Everybody knows that one. Iris with Kate Winslet. And I mean, there's a lot. The other good one right now, I think, on television is This Is Us. We see a major character with Alzheimer's. But again, just keep in mind that they're not always 100% medically accurate.
Of course.
Yeah, the other recommendation I would have is actually Lauren has a film on Netflix called Like Father, where there is a caregiver storyline embedded in that with Kristen Bell. There's a cameo by Seth in that one. Also, The Father was a movie that came out last year with Anthony Hopkins. That's an Alzheimer's disease theme. And Better Things also has a storyline there. But I think as we start to bring this more into, plays and theater and movies and TV, that is our goal, is that we're really talking about it more to sort of remove the confusion and the stigma and shame around it.
Yeah, I mean, that's the visibility part of it, and then you
Yeah.
have to educate. So in order to educate, you probably have to get people interested in, and that's certainly a good way to get people interested in it. How involved are the Rogans? I mean, it sounds like they're pretty involved on this.
Yeah, they're very involved, and we're very grateful for their involvement, because one, it's incredible to have creatives as part of your team, and they're visionaries and they're innovative, and they are truly committed to supporting HFC and our growth as an organization, and supporting family caregivers. They do a tremendous amount of appearances and speaking engagements and media for HFC. Seth testified several years ago on Capitol Hill about the disease. I think it's still the highest viewed C-SPAN video. I encourage everybody to check it out. It is.
He's a very, very smart guy, which you don't. I mean, he doesn't portray that in these movies because he's a fun guy, and he's, we don't need to. Everyone knows who Seth Rogen is, but very, very intelligent and well spoken, which is good to have.
Yeah.
Because you have to take the person seriously. And
yeah, and they're very generous with their time, and that is, and I think, for us as an organization who's still fairly new on the scene, right, Jen? That's a lot of what we've been doing over the last few years is really just establishing ourselves in the space. And so our care advisory board, where Jen is a member, is a group that I work with directly to help. It's a group of amazing thought leaders, again, in this space, who really guide us on our program development and strategy as we look to continue to grow and expand and make sure that our programs are being responsive in the space. And so it's a really critical group. We also have a science advisory board. And so our work in our brain health education, which we do very broadly in terms of our social media. I encourage everybody to follow us at We Are HFC. We have great brain health content on social, but also in terms of our work with brain health education. So our focus on brain health education is really with young people, high school and college students in particular. And so a real good example of Seth's involvement is that we developed coursework with Dr. Richard Isaacson, who's one of the premier sort of neuroscientists working on Alzheimer's disease and research. So we developed this coursework with him for the purpose of understanding how effective it is to have a celebrity sort of teach in this video content or webinar content brain health education to high school and college students. So we're getting ready to, and we completed that study. The results were published in the journal Neurology, which is very exciting. And so we're working on establishing what we're calling HFC Universe, which will be sort of a first of its kind interactive experience for high school and college students to not just learn about the disease, but learn how to change their behaviors and adopt brain healthy habits that they can use through the lifespan.
Yeah, let's talk about the events. What are you guys doing throughout the year to generate interest and education and donations? What do you typically do during the year? Obviously, COVID's a bit different, and what do you guys have planned moving forward?
Yeah, the COVID year was a challenge for everybody, right? So typically our big signature fundraising event we do one annually. It's an in-person event, and it's taken the shape of many different iterations, from a variety show, one of which is still on Netflix. So you can find one of our signature events there, where we bring together a number of comedians who do sets, and we have musical acts. Before, in late 2019, we had a county fair out in LA, which was amazing. All things county fair, Ferris wheels, rides, games. All the games were hosted by comedians. We had Tony Hawk do a skateboard demonstration. And so that was a huge and really fun event. And again, and there's a nice sizzle reel on our website that you can see. But again, a real sort of unusual way to bring attention to Alzheimer's disease, but sort of bringing, just many generations together to do something fun, but to raise awareness. We had a brain health scavenger hunt at the county fair. We also do brain health dinners. Some of those are in person. Again, those are fundraisers for a, sort of smaller curated group of folks who, will have a host who will, invite folks. We'll raise money that way. We're Seth and Lauren, and special guests will be there. We've taken that online. People can also do their own fundraisers. So we have a toolkit for people who, if they're interested in doing their own fundraiser on Facebook, HFC can support you in doing that. Last year, we did a virtual game show called Head to Head, and we will be doing that again in November, but in person in LA. But we will be having streaming tickets available. So, I think the silver lining to having to be innovative around events is that we've all, nonprofits sort of at large, have figured out a way to now expand beyond the in-person event, which I think has been real critical in terms of building our audiences and our fundraising.
But the big event, like in many charities and foundations, that's the lion's share of the donations that you guys get annually, correct?
Yeah, we also fundraise through foundations and, corporate grants as well. I mean, many nonprofits have sort of many streams of funding. So events, individual giving, we do appeals. We work with individuals who are interested in supporting our work. But yeah, the events are the lion's share. And that's what goes to funding the care grants. And our goal is to really, over time, continue to build as much to fund as many of the care grants as possible.
And Jen, what, aside from events, obviously that's going to educate, what would you suggest people do to learn more or help? What are the advice would you give?
For anybody that wants to learn more, especially if you have a loved one, go to a support group. Just listen. You don't have to participate, even if you just want to do it virtually. But there's a lot of great books out there. The 36-Hour Day is a big one by Dr. Rabins and Nancy Mace. It's a great book about dementia. There's a Validation Breakthrough by Naomi File is a really good one. I think learn what makes sense to you. Some people are not readers. Maybe watch a movie about dementia. Like, one thing I suggest to siblings, I always say the Savages movie, if you're struggling with a sibling who isn't participating, watch a movie like that and see if you see yourself in it. Or if some people, it's a lot of times in any jurisdiction, any geographic area, senior living communities always have free events for people who are caregiving, always. So be on the lookout for those. Get on the email lists for those. Home care companies also have events where oftentimes they'll provide a free meal, and somebody will come in, maybe somebody like me or a doctor, an expert will come in and talk about how to cope, how to do better with your loved one, how to engage them with their quality of life. But I think it's important. A lot of times families, they get very angry and upset because some people in the family don't get it. They don't understand why mom can't come to Thanksgiving with 12 other people. It's going to be really overwhelming for her. She's not going to do well. I think it can be also tricky. We have to remember that people who have dementia, they can have moments just like you and I. They can be just like you and I for an hour, and then next hour, they're not. And so just to try to remember that every day is going to be different, and to take the moments where they are themselves as a pleasant surprise.
Yeah, I was at Thanksgiving dinner with a family friend whose mother had dementia. I mean, she would confuse me for one of her grandchildren all the time, and it's sad. But you also got to be you got to be cognizant of the people who are, like you said, it's not just the person who's with the disease, it's the people who are trying to help. And how do they get relief aside from just a grant to help money? Is there organizations that have people go around and help give someone a day off? I mean, is that something that people do?
Not really. Go ahead, Alex.
Maybe I can do that. Let's start that.
Yeah, I mean, there are some really good technology tools. So, for example, there are apps out there that can help, sort of the circle of support to organize support. So in the same way, like if somebody, when people organize meal trains, right? There are apps out there that can help you make a list of like, look, I need help on these days with these things. And people who want to help, but who don't know where to start can say, oh, I'll sign up to do that, or I can come by. And I think, Jen, you can talk to, sort of that community, like how you build your mates, right?
Yeah. So I think what you said, I mean, are there organizations that just show up? Not really, but you might be part of a church or a synagogue or a temple, and there could be outreach. Maybe there's a volunteer mechanism there that they will do some volunteering, like you connect with people in your faith community. But in Cruising Through Caregiving, I talk a lot about the concept of one person is generally the captain of the caregiving ship, right? So in the Rogan's case, Lauren Miller Rogan's dad, who also serves on the care advisory board, who is it's just so great because he has used home care for himself and his wife when Adele was sick. But he would be the captain, and then Seth and Lauren are like the first mates that provide service. And then Dan, her brother, was part of the caregiving crew. But one person's really steering the ship. And I think what's really important is we need for the person who's the captain of the caregiving ship to decide what other tasks they're willing to outsource. Yeah. So are you accepting meals? Will you accept someone picking up your prescription? For some families and friends and neighbors, would you accept that somebody contributes financially? If you don't have a grant, like an HFC grant, maybe they'll contribute financially so you can purchase home care. And I think we have to you really do need to look at it as a village. You can't be prideful because this really is a community problem. It's not, I don't think any one person ever should be doing this by themselves. It's just too big of a job.
Yeah.
And pardon me if this is a bad analogy, but it feels like taking care of someone with Alzheimer's is almost like taking care of a baby or a pet because they can't tell you what they need, right?
You bring up such a good point, Matt. So obviously the person with Alzheimer's is an adult, they're a grown-up. But like I took care of my grandmother-in-law when she was dying and my grandfather when he was dying. And until like the last couple days, they could tell you exactly what they wanted. They could say, hey, I'm hot. Can you turn up the air conditioning? Hey, I'm thirsty. Can I have some water? You're exactly right. At the end stage, people are nonverbal. And so it's a lot of detective work. What does this person need to feel better or comforted? Or are they tired? Are they hungry? Are they in pain? So you're right on target with that. And I think that's one of the hardest parts about being a caregiver, just not knowing how to make it better. And you have to really look at their body language and their facial expressions to be able to tell.
Yeah, and again, I think that points to the fact that like none of us get training as caregivers in the same way. If you choose to be a parent, you're not necessarily getting training to be a parent either. And so for a lot of people, it comes on very suddenly. It's an unexpected, but in a lot of cases, there are people who are embracing it. They want to provide that care for their loved one, but like, where do you start? And it can be very overwhelming to know where to start and to know what to prepare for sort of in the stages ahead. And that's why we call it a journey, because there's no, it's not so precise, and every case is different and it's so nuanced, even though there's similarities. And so but the good news is there are a lot of resources and there's a lot that we do know. And there are a lot of people who've been in it for a long time and who bring these resources to bear. And so you're not alone, and there's really good information out there and tools.
Yeah, my other questions I always like to ask: where does the money go? I mean, for every dollar, what is it? Where's the money going?
In general, or
just in general. I mean, at HFC, but
the majority of the funding goes for, we're a very small staff. We're a staff of 4. We're small but mighty. So majority of the funding goes directly to program services, and we have a small budget that goes to brain health prevention research. But we basically, our 4 pillars of work revolve around driving awareness, inspiring change, care for caregivers, and care for brains. And you can see more about our strategic plan. It's also on our website. We just released that this year, a 3-year strategic plan. We also issue an annual report every year. So all of the financials are in those annual reports, and all of those are also on our website.
Okay, so let's tell people how they can help, what events they can participate in, how they can get your book, Jen.
So the first stop, I would say, is the website. It's www.wearehfc.org. And on there, you will see information about our programs. You will see ways to donate. You will see information about our events. So like I said, our big event is coming up in November. So feel free to also sign up for our email alerts, because then you'll get all the information about all the events throughout the year, whether it's a caregiver event or a fundraising event. You can donate your birthday. You can host a brain health dinner. You can donate directly. You can make a donation in honor of somebody or in memory of somebody. We appreciate every amount, and we know that it's not easy to make a donation. And so we always appreciate it when people choose HFC.
The other thing is Amazon Smile, that if you go to Amazon Smile and you put HFC in there, when you make an Amazon purchase, it will give a small donation to HFC. As far as cruising through caregiving, cruisingthroughcaregiving.com, you can get a chapter of the book and all the worksheets, but anywhere books are sold, it's in Barnes & Noble, Amazon, and it's actually, if you're on a budget, it's in most libraries too.
What's next for HFC? I mean, where do you go from here?
Man, we got big plans. If you know HFC, you know we are very ambitious. So like I said, we're in year 1 of a 3-year strategic plan, which is really about growing what we're already doing and scaling our work into new areas. So I think our biggest initiative now will be our HFC Universe, launching our brain health education engagement with high school and college students. And then we have plans to continue to grow our care for caregivers resources. So we'll continue to do support groups. 2 years ago, I think we were running maybe 6 support groups. We are now up to 22 support groups for caregivers. Yep. And we do offer drop-in support groups. So I do want to make a plug for that. So we offer those 6 days a week, and the information is on our website. That's really designed for people who, maybe they can't commit to a weekly or bi-monthly support group. You can just sort of come in as needed. Just when you need an ear, when you need to vent, we offer them at different times of the day. And so next year we'll be in year 2. We'll be, we're looking to expand on things like caregiver coaching. And we are very committed, and we've been spending a lot of time looking at ways to bring our resources to communities that are overrepresented in Alzheimer's disease, but maybe under-resourced. So we have a lot of amazing pilot projects happening right now. So looking at different ways to reach diverse communities through different methodologies, and bringing our support groups and care grant resources to communities. I mean, one of the things that's challenging is that we're not a brick and mortar organization, so we're national in scope. And so we're really proud to have built many very meaningful and robust partnerships with other colleague agencies. We always say there's no ego in this game. There's enough work to go around. We are happy to partner with people to the extent that our capacity allows. So lots of great stuff happening.
We hope to be a part of your events in the future.
Yeah.
I think you guys got some great stuff going on. I always like to end our segment with asking the guests if you have one person who you could spend a day with. They have to be alive and you can't be related to them. Who would you choose and what are you going to do with them? We got a list going. This is our 116th episode. We've got some pretty good answers. We're making some outreach.
Do you make those things happen? That's what
I'm trying. I will make it. Well, now that we know
somebody that you have to spend a day with.
You can spend a day, 24 hours. Yeah, spend a day with anyone in the world as long as they're living and you're not related to them. Also, I know if someone says Seth Rogen, I know who I'm calling.
Yeah. Well, I just have to honor my 13-year-old self and probably say Duran Duran.
Duran. Yeah. They were
on Jimmy Fallon this week, so I'm very excited.
That is pretty exciting. Oh, this is a tough one.
I was a big fan of them when I was growing up. So, good choice.
Yeah.
Are you just going to have a private show? What are you going to do?
Oh, if I had 24 hours, I don't know.
Yeah.
Oh, wow. This is, this is a really tough one. All right, how about my celebrity crush, Christopher Maloney?
There you go.
Yeah, why not?
There we go. That's the first. You got two new ones. We get a lot of repeats, but these are two new ones that we're going to put on. What are you guys going to do? I mean,
if you had 24 hours, Jen, how would you spend that time?
Oh gosh, call my husband and be like, I'm with Christopher Maloney.
It's on the Entourage acceptable list. Well, look, I really appreciate you guys joining. I'm sorry for the technical difficulties at the beginning.
No, it's all good.
I'm glad we got through it. Wanted to get you some Field of Dreams stuff in the background, but we're going to give a shout out to the Dyersville Family Restaurant.
Nice.
Look
Let
at
me
that.
sit here and do a show and
take it all in for us.
Yeah, check out wearehfc.org, Twitter, wearehfc. Get the book, donate, get educated about it so we can make the life of the people who are suffering with it and the ones who are supporting it better, right? One day at a time and do whatever we can. So we look forward to seeing what comes next and being a part of HFC moving forward. Everyone have a great weekend. We'll be back broadcasting on Monday, back from the home office, the Wolff Den. But have a great day and a great weekend. Thanks.
Have a great time at the game.
Yeah,
Thank you.
enjoy.
Bye.
Bye.